would linger here. Still we share our tears. Letter to a loved one, a message to an unborn child. All that they were is written here.
This music is dedicated to the many thousands of forgotten Chinese heroes who so bravely served the Allied cause in the First World War. It's time to set the record straight. 100 years ago, these courageous young Chinese men risked their lives and their futures to support us in the gravest human conflict ever witnessed on Earth. Their contribution was immense, the risks unthinkable. We must now express our deepest thanks to the Chinese Labour Corps and to the Chinese people, and properly acknowledge and accept all that these men did for us and the difference they made all those many years ago. We thank them all now, each and every one of them. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Wherever they have fallen, together we remember them, their fears and their words linger here. Long gray faces, letter to a loved one, blessing for an unborn child. Oh, they may have been ended here. These 100 years of our in rapidly so rapidly, all that they were forever here for you.
My mother's family lived in China for nearly 70 years, and my grandmother's diary shows that the British families in China were also torn apart by the war, as were the Chinese Labour Corps families. My grandfather, William James Hawkins, a businessman in Shanghai and fluent in Mandarin, joined the Chinese Labour Corps as an officer and set sail from Weihai on the 10th of March 1917 for France, leaving behind a wife and 3 daughters, one of whom was my mother. His wife Gladys kept this diary, and there are a few excerpts referring to her husband Billy when he returned to China in 1918 to pick up another ship full of Chinese Labour Corps workers. The diary reads, 6th of January 1918. The ship, Empress of Asia, due to arrive 7 p.m. tonight. Great excitement all day. Of course I have a terrible cold and look awful, but I don't expect he'll care. At 8:30 p.m. I went down to the docks. New dark blue dress, white hat, new Burberry coat. Waited at customs until 9:45 p.m. Then news came that his ship wouldn't arrive tonight. Very disappointing. 7th of January 1918. Up at 6 a.m. and started telephoning. No news until 8, when they said launch from the ship would arrive at 11 a.m. I was at wharf by 10, but very cold and windy. Tender came in sight at 11:20. Billy in bow anxiously looking for me, in CLC uniform, much to my joy. Children knew him at once, but Betty cried. During January there are many references in the diary to Billy giving lectures in Shanghai about the Chinese Labour Corps. During February, Billy goes to Weihai and is involved in recruiting Chinese mechanics for the CLC and continues lecturing about the CLC into March. On the 22nd of March 1918, Billy gives a lecture in Shanghai entitled Experiences with Chinese Labour Corps, Proceeds in Aid of the Fund for the Chinese in France, ticket $1, 40 slides and cinefilms used. 7th of April 1918, lecture at YMCA on relation of the Missionary Society to the Chinese Labour Corps in France, as seen by a non-missionary. 14th of April 1918, Billy put on notice to return to France. 10th of May 1918, Billy leaves for France. A last walk around the garden with the children. So glad to be going and not being left behind, even if it is only to Vancouver. 10th of June 1918, Vancouver. The day I have been dreading. Went down to his ship, but not allowed on board. Billy waiting on the gangplank to say goodbye and kiss me once more. I didn't say anything. I had to hold tight onto my self-control. Managed to smile and smile as the ship gradually moved away, with dear Billy standing on B-deck. Broke down utterly and couldn't sleep at night for misery and loneliness. So Gladys returned to Shanghai, but she was pregnant with her 4th daughter, whom Billy did not see until 1920. The diary continues. 24th of November 1918. Telegram from Billy in France. Rejoicing, looking forward to returning. 24th of May 1919. Cable from Billy in France. Demobilization possible soon. 8th of June 1919. Billy got his captaincy. Commanding officer of 30th Company, Chinese Labour Corps at Bourbourg, France. 12th of January 1920. Left Shanghai to meet Billy at Yokohama, Japan. 17th of January 1920, met up with Billy again. That's the end of the references to the Chinese Labour Corps.
They believed their territory had been stolen or some such.
So they killed us all.
Archduke foreigner?
They did.
And this Archduke foreigner's father took revenge.
No, this Archduke foreigner's father didn't like his son.
Why not?
Brother Big Dog, just try to rest.
There's no rest for me. Keep talking, Professor.
Our brother Big Dog sucked the last of his poison yesterday.
Farewell to the pipe. Farewell to my
We
love.
have some discomfort for a day or two.
Continue with the foreign devil story, Professor. It distracts my agonized senses.
I only say what I read in the newspapers, but I believe it was a case of honour.
Only the truly powerful will indulge themselves with honor.
Indeed, you are correct, oh sickly Big Dog. The Austrian-Hungarian foreigners.
Who has an emperor?
Correct. Issued an ultimatum which the Serbian foreigners refused, and so the Austrian-Hungarian foreigners declared war, and the Russian
Who
foreigners,
used to have an emperor?
correct, also began to mobilise their army.
Wait. So these Russian foreigners were the first to join in?
The Russian foreigners are friends with the Serbian foreigners.
They don't have an emperor.
They're too small for an emperor.
So now these Russian foreigners are not in this war because they're fighting against each other in their own country.
Because they want to get rid of their emperor like we did.
Correct.
These foreigners are like a bad opera.
The German foreigners.
The evil German foreigners.
The evil German foreigners.
Who also have an emperor.
Correct, and are friends with the Austrian-Hungarian foreigners who don't like the Serbian foreigners, then decide to declare war on the Russian foreigners.
Not the Serbian foreigners.
Well, they're not interested in the Serbian foreigners.
Even though they don't like them.
Do you go around thinking about the pig shit you stepped in last week?
The French foreigners.
Who are a republic.
Like we are now.
So no emperor.
Correct, and are bound by treaty to the Russian foreigners, then find themselves at war with the German foreigners and by extension the Austrian-Hungarian foreigners who then invade Belgium.
Wait. What in the name of Buddhist truth is Belgium?
Belgium is a small nation between Germany and France.
Too small for an emperor then.
Actually, no.
Ah, these foreigners are a mighty bunch indeed.
Mightier than you. You thought we were in Paris when we reached Shanghai.
The mechanical snake we travelled in took so long, how was I supposed to know we were still in China?
The street signs were in Chinese.
And who's winning this mighty war, Professor?
It hangs in the balance. Our side waits for the mighty Americans.
The mighty Americans that banned us.
Under their Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882.
Why did they ban us?
We work too hard.
Big Dog, they heard about you.
I must confess, I've read as many newspapers and periodicals as I can lay my hands on, and at the end of it all, I still have no heavenly idea why these foreigners are at war with each other.
At least we Chinese are not fighting anyone.
Except ourselves.
No shit.
Attempting to quell our own rebellions and civil strife like a land of fevered cannibals.
Professor, these Westerners believe that they're superior to we yellow folk, do they not?
The Westerners believe all who are not of pale aspect to be inferior races.
They don't think the Japanese are inferior, though.
The Westerners certainly do believe the Japanese to be inferior, but the Japanese have purchased favour from the Westerners by using their supposedly powerful ships
Metal sea monsters!
to protect everyone else's metal sea monsters from the German underwater metal sea monsters.
Underwater.
They can hide inside the sea and destroy other metal sea monsters.
They have sea monsters that can do this.
They've already destroyed a ship, killing over 500 of our fellow Chinese labourers.
Oh my sky.
This was invented by the god of chaos.
Are there any metal sea monsters here, Professor?
In this ocean, they reckon not. And they'll shortly be taking us by rail across land.
So no underwater sea monsters?
Not in Canada.
Oh, thank the celestial
What's
stars.
Canada? Canada is a sovereign republic to the north of America.
So they don't have an emperor?
No, but they do have a punitive entry tax, which is why we're to be caged in wagons like smuggled farm stock.
Why?
Like their American neighbours, they don't want us there.
Does anyone under heaven not hate us Chinese?
Japanese like us.
They certainly like our Shandong.
Their soldiers are everywhere.
The Japanese have an emperor.
As well as imperial ambition. They eye our former Middle Kingdom like a ravening wolf does a piece of succulent meat.
Wish we still had an emperor.
Not this again.
Nothing stopped. Nothing changed. Apart from our hairstyles. And me.
Were you... Eunuch Ling's father thought his only future would be as a eunuch in the Emperor's court.
Then they did away with the Emperor just as he was about to come of age.
He said I'd return home with the riches of the great Cheng and be celebrated far and wide. I was so young and I bled so much. And he sewed me up with a goose feather.
I'm very honored on behalf of the Chinese Embassy to attend this special commemoration event organized by the Meridian Society and the Ming-I Institute. World War I ended in the year 1918, but anyhow, some of the CLC members returned to China maybe in the year 1920. Yeah, because after the war, they have to stay behind to clear the battlefields. I think some of these CLC members never had the chance to return home because they died of disease, died of hard working, whatever, or died of maybe some wounds. These are the unsung heroes. I think their story should be told and their contributions should be remembered from generation to generation. Of course, to organize such kind of commemoration events is to learn from the past so that we can solve the problems of today and have a better future.
我三爷长得比我还魁梧，他1.8米多，1.8米多标准的山东大汉的形象。而且当时这个说哈，为什么这个英国人、法国人来我们这个山东征兵？当时就说我们山东这个胶东兵啊，当时是最好的兵种，具备这个中国传统的这个勤劳，这个能干。
他要说会耍鸟和会武功啊，挺魁梧也长的。脖子还高，来这舟船取引的，也最有见的，有见身体挺好，这先和他比武啊，来舟船走进去打擂台啊，没有打过他第一啊，也叫飞毛腿呀他叫，他为何叫飞毛腿呀？一碰了水，也撒就踹下去。
In one of the letters. I saw this quite entertaining little bit where my grandfather was very pleased because a rather bullying British officer, which obviously my grandfather didn't like very much, challenged one of the Chinese Labor Corps people who claimed to have great martial arts, powers, where, obviously he didn't consider that much. And that he got a real licking from the Chinese Labor Corps person, to my grandfather's great delight, and it put him in his place.
The one family story is that when he was with the Chinese Labor Corps, he thought very highly of the men. For what reason, I don't know. Presumably they were good workers, they were positive people.
They did a whole variety of operational works, from dock workers unloading guns, building roads, mending railway lines and digging trenches, but also quite a lot of the photographs that Grandpa took were of them pulling armaments apart, and where the armaments couldn't be disentangled, then they would take them out onto the beaches and blow them up. So that was some of the work was quite dangerous.
运输炮弹，炮弹是比较大的，一般就是一个人扛一个。我们这长山县的其中一个马同志，身强力壮，他用一个木棍挑着2个筐，前面滚上一个炮弹，后面两个炮弹，这样他就飘着过来，这样他就说。挣钱多。来那个外国，我说就是那生活也挺好，就来码头上扛大个子、扛包啊，反正也不知道什么东西了，反正扛起来走，每月吧10块钱那样，
给教你们我们再10块钱那样。
他没参加战斗啊，说的没参加战斗，他啥呢？他当厨师。他当厨师。
那他当厨师，那么他原来在家里会做饭吗？
在家不会，在家不会呀。他这不，他回来了以后干了工，就竟然做饭。他说我来外头学的，说做饭。
My grandfather's letters also talk about food. I think food was a major issue. Chinese are not ready to give up their diet.
可是，在当时来说呢，我们的华工呢，大部分人都习惯于晚上吃的特别多，一个是说时间比较富裕、比较充裕，他不再劳动了，所以长期吃的特别多，可是英国人呢，他对这个饮食的管理是这样的，他晚上不让你吃的特别多，他不是特意的不让你吃饱，他的英国的饮食习惯是什么？晚上几片面包。然后呢，给你加火腿，加黄油，然后就当晚饭了，是吧？可这个量上来说呢，就差异很大了。所以华工们普遍觉得吃不饱，一吃不饱他就闹事儿。他认为英国人对我们华工待遇不公平，因为你当时的合同上写着管饱，你现在为嘛给这么少？怎么能管饱？是吧？后来为怎么解决这个问题呢？后来英国采取这个方法，反正伙食费给你们，自己做饭解决这问题，你吃什么你自己随便。最后采取这样一个方法，这是从那开始就是华工开始自己做饭了，
Hello, my name is Martin Crook, and my great-grandfather was Homer Grant Brown, a Canadian lieutenant in the Chinese Labor Corps in France during the First World War. I would like to read a short excerpt from a letter he wrote on November 7th, 1918 to my great-grandmother Muriel, who was back home with the family in Sichuan, China. Yesterday, the rain came down in torrents, and I brought my men home at about 10:30. The work was impracticable. My clothes were wet, though I was only wet, strange to say, under my knees. My raincoat tail just drips the water nicely into the top of my high boots. What, between exciting news from the war and the darkness of the tent, I did nothing all day. I could not set my mind to a thing. At 7, it was dark as Egypt land, and the ground is muddy and full of shell holes. Small ones, about 4 feet deep and 6 across. Even these cause one to stumble. You have no idea of confusion till you have a party of 100, with one dim lantern, going over broken ground in a moonless, starless night. You are put to unload commodities, but where they are to be put, or how it is to be done, is unknown except to one person who has to disappear occasionally to learn, and, with the best of intentions, can enlighten only one spot and a few minds at a time. No lights, no nothing. However, our Chinese friends had had their evening meal, and we came home at 12, all in good spirits and ready for our downy bunks. That was Lieutenant Homer Brown of the 115th Company of the Chinese Labor Corps in 1918.
I would like to share with you all my own personal remembrance of the Chinese Labor Corps. Until about 2 years ago, when an exhibition of the Chinese Labor Corps was held in Birmingham, I was unaware of the Chinese Labor Corps and what they did. It was only then, after living in the UK for 45 years, that I realized that nearly 100,000 Chinese people had served Britain during the First World War. They were then forgotten until a few years ago, when a group of people from the Chinese community fought hard for the Chinese Labour Corps to be recognized by the UK government. Why is it important that we do not forget? Why is it important for me to remember the Chinese Labour Corps? I was born in Malaysia and came to the UK as a student. Over the years, UK has become my home, and I am fairly well integrated into British society. Yet, for a very long time, I have not felt connected to this land. My home is definitely here in the UK. I feel comfortable here. But a part of me felt like I'm a stranger living in a strange land. However, when I learned about the Chinese Labour Corps, something in me changed. Although it is not likely that my ancestors would be a member of the Chinese Labour Corps, I felt a kind of kinship, a feeling that I have forefathers, although unrelated to me, who had come decades earlier before me, endured hardship, bled, and some even died to serve this country. The Chinese Labour Corps sparked in me a sense of historical connection that strengthened my ties to this land. I begin to feel more strongly that this land is also my land, my home. However, I also realized that the poor treatment, the prejudices, and the racist abuse experienced by the Chinese Labour Corps 100 years ago have not gone away. They are just as real today. Therefore, remembering the Chinese Labour Corps reminds me of two things. Firstly, it reminds me that we have a place and a home here in the UK that is worth fighting for. We must make the efforts to challenge and overcome anti-Chinese racism, stereotyping, and cultural misunderstanding that we have today. We must build the bridges that promote mutual respect, acceptance of diversity, and inclusivity for all people in the UK. And the second thing that reminds me is that we need to go beyond just serving the interests of our own Chinese community. If we want the UK to be a good home for us, for our families, and for our children, we must take a greater responsibility to contribute to the overall well-being of this land that has become our home. And that, to me, is what I remember, my remembrance of the Chinese Labour Corps. Ourselves, Chinese community, having a place here, and our connection to this land, and that we need to contribute to the well-being of this land. Thank you.
This is the story of my grandfather. Over 100 years ago, in 1916, my grandfather first stepped onto European soil. It was the beginning of our family's life in the West, and it all started with a war. His name was Su Yunyi, but I knew him as Grampy. At the age of 19, he left his tiny home village in South China after hearing of an opportunity of work to provide for his family. He was young, fearless, hard-working and optimistic, driven by a strong sense of family duty and responsibility. Su Yunyi knew little of faraway lands. The other side of the world was a mystery, a step into the unknown. He signed up as one of around 150,000 Chinese labourers recruited by the French and British. His fate was sealed with a thumbprint on the contract. These adventurous and brave young men were to play a crucial role in the Great War. After months at sea, he made it to the Western Front. Hundreds didn't. However, agricultural and industrial work did not await Su Yunyi. Despite a firm promise of no military operations in the contract, he was sent to work on an active military airfield. He found himself in a war zone, far from home. He was put in charge of a squad tasked with the job of filling in bomb craters for the Allied planes to land, sometimes when bombs were still being dropped around them. He also worked on planes at the airfield. How tenacious his hold on life was to survive the bombs, the bullets, the disease, the landmines and the influenza that swept through the camps after the war, as well as the mental challenges of war and isolation of being so far from home. After the war, along with all the other Chinese labourers, he stayed on for 2 more years to carry out the dangerous and gruesome work of clearing munitions to make the land safe again and to bury their fellow countrymen in battlefield graves. I thank my wonderful Grandpa Sue for every sacrifice and hardship he suffered, so that our lives and the lives of generations to come would be easier and full of opportunities. There is no doubt that this backbone of Chinese labourers in World War I played an immensely important role in the Great War, and without them, the outcome could have been very different. Please remember those Chinese labourers and their contribution. Be proud of them and what they did for us so that we could live in freedom today. They really are our Chinese heroes of the Great War. Today we remember all those brave young men who left their families in China and risked their lives in the Great War. We honour you with hearts full of gratitude and respect. Thank you.
In memory of Chinese labor corps who sacrificed in World War I, pupils in Waken Abbey School are going to read a poem named We, written by a Chinese poet whose name is Yuan Fan. On that table we can see paper cranes as a symbol of peace against war. Thanks for support from Wenlan and my headmaster, Mr. David Griffiths.
作者远帆，为纪念一战中国劳工而作。我们倒下过，那是我们自己的跌倒。我们仁慈的上帝说，生来平等的我们，倒下的如此卑微，低过一战阵亡的英国军犬，低过西照里死去却辉煌站立于山野的荒草。我们倒下的时候，没有名字，没有墓碑，只有手环上泥血模糊的数字。我们倒下了，在一战中，在列强交织的流弹上，耕读传家的头颅枪毙，修身性立高德的肉身，无声的消亡，霞光未现。那些英武的军官，甚至没有多看上一眼。我们站起了，那只能是我们自己的站起，像一个巨人站在百年荒原的尽头。中华骨血依旧，修身齐家治国平天下，千年古训依旧。他们是昔日的我们，我们是今日的他们，我们和他们并无天差地别，但身后的祖国已 已经完全不同。我们被拖入太多的战争，所以格外珍惜和平。我们曾遭那样的歧视，所以懂得尊重他人。我们曾千百年引领世界，所以复兴犹如使命。我们曾在太长太黑的夜里行走，所以钟爱每一份善意，每一份光阴。战争，你诅咒我为恶魔，我当然根本不是。你千万遍地重复你的咒语，我也不会因此成魔。谁的恶魔都不是，除了你，战争。
大家好，我是来自山东济南一战华工后裔程玲。我的爷爷毕翠德于1917年被英国招募为华工，远赴欧洲参加第一次世界大战，于1919年9月27日在法国战场不幸身亡，现埋葬在法国北部一个英军墓地。回来的华工捎回来了爷爷的勋章。深明大义的奶奶用我们家乡传统的特殊的招魂方式安葬了爷爷。2003年，女儿在英国留学期间，通过英国墓葬管理委员会提供的华工阵亡名单，找到了爷爷具体死亡时间和埋葬地点。2008年11月，在法国华侨华人和留在法国的华工后裔帮助下，由时任法国总理拉法兰和法国退伍军人部签批，促成了我们一家3口到法国祭奠了爷爷，完成了我们一家几代人的愿望。我是第一个找到自己的祖父并祭奠的，还有好多死亡华工后裔没有找到自己的亲人，因此我也想借此机会传达我们一战华工后裔的愿望，希望侨胞们能帮助更多的后裔找到他们长眠在欧洲的亲人。14万华工远渡重洋来到欧洲，在极其艰苦的条件下与英法两国人民并肩作战，他们用自己的鲜血和生命为结束人类这场浩劫做出了重要贡献。我们都不会忘记这段历史，他们永远受到中英两国人民的缅怀和纪念。
I'm Cheng Ling, descendant of a Chinese laborer of the First World War from Shandong. My grandfather, Bi Cui De, was recruited into the CLC in 1917 by the British Army and set off for faraway Europe to take part in the war. He died on September the 27th, 1919, on a French battlefield and was buried in a British cemetery in northern France. Returning labourers brought back my grandfather's medal, and my grandmother carried out a burial ritual for him, evoking the spirits according to the tradition of our forefathers. In 2003, my daughter, who was studying in Britain at the time, managed to discover the date of my grandfather's death and location of his grave from a list of Chinese labourers buried abroad that had been compiled by the Commonwealth War Graves Commission. In November 2008, with the help of the overseas Chinese and descendants of Chinese labourers living in France, French Prime Minister Rapin and the French Ministry of Veterans Affairs granted permission to our family of 3 to travel to France to pay tribute to my grandfather, thus fulfilling the wishes of generations of our family. I was the first to find my grandfather and to be able to pay homage to him. But there are still many descendants who have not yet traced their relatives. So I'd like to take this opportunity to convey the wish of fellow descendants of Chinese laborers that the overseas Chinese may help them locate their ancestors buried in Europe. 140,000 Chinese workers traveled across the seas to Europe and stood side by side with the people of Britain and France under the harshest conditions. They sacrificed their lives to help bring an end to this human catastrophe. We will never forget this period of history, and these laborers will always be remembered and honored by the people of China and Britain.
Good morning. I would just like to say how delighted we both are to be here representing our grandfather, Jim Maltstead. Today, my brother John is going to do a reading from one of his diaries. I say one of his diaries because there are actually 5 diaries in total, all beautifully handwritten and filled with sketches. Also behind us, we have a banner that was presented to our grandfather from the 169 Company the day that he left France to return back to Belfast. I do hope that you enjoy the reading.
It was an experience of a lifetime, my service with the CLC. Did I ever in my wildest dreams imagine for a moment that I would spend a good part of my army career as a lieutenant in the Chinese Labour Corps? I did not. And what a career. Over 2 years of adventure, strange living, thrills, heartbreak, happiness, and a wonderful experience among these sons of China. Why do I write this? Well, just to explain our feverish activity on the lines of communication. At times, we walked about in a perfect daze. We worked day and night to feed the guns, the aeroplanes, the tanks, and the troops. Wearied too, or half-doped for the want of sleep. Some of the boys were almost stupid, poor fellows, from the physical strain imposed on them. It was not work these days, it was pure slavery. Hundreds of thousands and hundreds of thousands again and again. Boxes of petrol, tins of lubricating oils, drums of grease, loaded, sealed, shunted out and away up the line to keep the mighty wheels of war moving. No shortage of petrol tomorrow for our aircraft. I feel delighted at our great work, knowing in my heart how they depend on us, on the lines of communication for supplies. Dog-tired, we gather our squads and march out for a few hours' rest in our camp some kilometres away. My head sinks on my chest, asleep on my feet. Readers, it was marvellous. It was wonderful. It was magnificent. No words of mine can give the CLC its full mode of praise for a feat of stupendous magnitude carried out on the Western Front in 1917-18. Did I learn anything myself? I certainly did. It was East and West, different points of views, and yet much to learn by all of us. When I look back on it all, it was the experience of a lifetime crowded into a few short years. Years of joy, years of some sadness, and something that I will never forget. I looked after these youths like a father and mother rolled into one, but they repaid me 1,000-fold, those boys of 169 Company, Chinese Labour Corps in France. I will take back with me a love for the Chinese people that will never fade from my heart until I reach my great-great-grandfathers in the land of many shadows. I have loved you always as a father and tried to give and get you a square deal in a strange land many thousands of miles from your own country. When you get back to Weihai Wei in a few short weeks, be sure and remember your gallant brothers who died in France. They died for 169 Company and helped to save civilization just as much as our own soldiers did. They now sleep their last long sleep in honored graves. I will never forget the 169 Company of glorious, wonderful boys. I salute you, one and all. Bravo, the boys from the land of the dragon. Bravo, indeed.
Hello.
Song Unsung is a new musical we've been developing.
100 years after the Chinese Labour Corps,
The CLC
finished their work in the killing fields of France during World War I.
will present 3 songs today with some narration to give context. The story of Britain's Forgotten Army. January 1917, at the port of Weihai Wei in Shandong province, the British recruitment center for the CLC in northeast China. A peasant farmer and CLC chorus undergo medical examinations, while naked farmers, 3 to a tub, wash in the background.
They cut me Q and make me squash in a tub full of naked men. They check me teeth and make me wash with the rest of the labor corps. Did I just leave my farm and home for a tub full of naked blokes? Say bye to mama, poor man alone for the arms of the labor corps. This water's cold. Don't touch me.
A lower middle class interpreter enters.
Weihai Wei, port of dreams. Weihai Wei's where it starts. A chance to escape, or so it might seem, as part of the scheme to work abroad. In Europe I'll get to explore a brand new adventures in store.
They ink me thumbs and stamp them onto paper like an animal. Number me and told me I'm from then call 84489. I'm losing face, what's left is shame to be a sheep without no name. Now I think we're all the same. You're no, we ain't no animals. Do you think we're criminals? I'm a man, not a number.
84489.
The name's Zhang Changsong.
Who cares? Back in line.
Soon we'll be boarding for sweeping oceans and distant lands. Soon we'll be sailing for grand adventures in Petit France.
Contracts, thumbprints here.
Me? No. I'm no illiterate peasant. I'm an interpreter. Xu Kaidi.
All aboard!
Full of fear of the unknown world, losing myself in a strange land.
Full of hope for the unknown world, losing myself in a strange land.
The CLC are posted to camps across France, where they slave away on 10-hour shifts, 7 days a week.
Dig trenches, toilets, unload ships and trains, lay tracks, build roads, repair tanks and planes, move bombs and bullets.
One slip, and you've had it.
In China, the interpreter's wife, Mei Mei, gives birth to their baby, while the Germans invent the ultimate weapon.
Look! Giant hornet machines come. Boom! Boom! Woman screams, legs shattered in pieces. We're supposed to be safe, another cries, boom! Sudden hush. My face covered in blood.
亚麻动了身啊，有的把分送啊，有的把地耕啊，赶上那大马车，就往那坡上奔，欢欢喜喜，好像是去迎亲啊。
Cheng's frail old mama passes away in China, while the CLC dodge bullets and landmines, collecting the dead in no man's land.
Back to work!
Desperately homesick, Cheng falls in love with a local French widow, while Kai yearns for Mei Mei and his baby. Armistice comes in November 1918, but the CLC carry on working until their contracts end in 1920.
What was it for? All this hatred and killing. A bit of land, mill pride and ego. To live, to love. Only that's of value.
I settle in France and start a family with my wife.
I take the long voyage back to China.
Are you home, or is this a dream in the garden of Peony Pavilion? Did I waste away? Am I not reborn?
Without our contribution, the war would have dragged on for much longer. We played our part in achieving Allied victory, securing peace in our time.
Heaven and earth. Let that echo forever around the world. Peace in our time.
Buddha, Lord of compassion, for my daughter and your son, peace in our time.
To my fallen comrades, I say, a good reputation endures forever.
To my comrades, I say, a noble duty bravely done.
你好，你去哪？去英国。Hello, where are you going, England for? I am off to work, be still and calm. 保持冷静，统治我去上班。I am off to England Green， 不要担心。
Pack up your troubles in your old kit bag and smile, smile, smile. While you for Lucifer to light your fag. Smile, boys, that's the style. What's the use of worrying? It never was worthwhile. So pack up your troubles in your old kit bag and smile, smile, smile.
Smile, keyboard, smile now.
Thank you, Winston Leong, Benjamin Wong, Candy Ma, and Chris Chan, composer, co-lyricist, and MD. I'm David Say, writer, co-lyricist, and director, and our company is East Zest. Please talk to our producer, Suki Cheng, if you'd like to support the development of Song Unsung. We hope you enjoyed it and want to see more. And now it's your turn, because I'm sure you know the words. Pack up your troubles in your kit bag and smile, smile, smile. While you're Lucifer to light your flag. Smile, boys, that's the style. What's the use of worrying? It never was worthwhile. So pack up your troubles in your
The plaque was installed in 2018 and filmed as part of Britain's Forgotten Army, a documentary shown on Channel 4. It was the first piece of public recognition in Britain for the sacrifices of the CLC and placed inside China Exchange to allow for more public memorial to be erected when funds and a suitable outdoor location have been found.